I'm 73 years old now, and before I talk about what I've lost, I need to go back to where it all began. When I was very young and believed I was doing everything right, in my 20s and early 30s, I was exactly like you are now. I believed that if I worked hard enough, I would buy my freedom. I believed that if I climbed high enough and gained enough power, I would be safe. American society taught me that in a very convincing way, become the best in the room, become the person the system can't do without, make everyone need you, and then you'll win. I believed it. I was disciplined. I was ambitious. I arrived early, left late, said yes when others said no. And it worked, at least at first. Money came early, titles came faster than I expected. People listened when I spoke. They asked my opinion. Before making decisions, my phone rang at midnight, and instead of being annoyed, I felt proud. I felt important. I felt like I was moving forward while others were still struggling. I thought that was winning. I thought I was building an enviable life, a life that others would look at and nod in approval. I had no idea that, step by step, I was signing an invisible contract, a contract that would give me money, respect, and power, but take something else in return. And by the time I realized it, there was no way to cancel it. When I was 52, I was exactly where the younger version of me had dreamed of being. I wasn't just successful. I was at the top. I was the decision maker, the one others waited for before acting. My schedule was booked solid for weeks. My phone was never silent. And I naturally believed that everything worked because I was there. The day of the incident started like any other. In my busy life, an important meeting, the kind no one wanted to postpone because it involved big numbers and decisions that affected a lot of people. That morning, I felt a heaviness in my chest. Not pain, just discomfort. My wife asked if I was okay. I answered the way I'd always answered for years. I'm fine. An assistant suggested rescheduling the meeting. I refused. I said I'd be there, not because I was really fine, but because I wasn't used to the idea of not showing up. I walked into the meeting room, sat down, started talking about plans, strategies, growth, as if everything was still under my control. And then, right in the middle of a sentence I thought was very important, the room started to blur. Sounds faded away. I put my hand on the table, tried to steady myself, tried to keep talking, because I was used to always appearing fine. But my body didn't wait for my permission. My chest tightened, my breathing shortened. I heard someone call my name, and then the floor came up fast. When I opened my eyes again, I was in the hospital. White lights, antiseptic smell, wires connected to my chest, Orvi in my arm. I couldn't get up on my own. I couldn't decide anything for myself, not even when I could have a drink of water. My wife stood in the corner of the room, eyes red, trying to stay calm. The doctor said I was lucky. You were very lucky. They said, as if nearly dying was just a statistic, and lying there. I suddenly realized something I'd never allowed myself to think before. The meeting went on. Decisions were made. Work didn't stop because I was in a hospital bed. The things I believed only I could do got handled, just without me. A few days later, I heard that someone else had taken over my part, not out of malice, just out of necessity. And what hurt me the most wasn't that they found a replacement, but that I understood that for years I'd been telling myself a story to keep running, that I had to do it, that I was carrying the responsibility, that if I stopped, everything would fall apart. But the reality was, when I stopped, everything kept going, maybe a little off rhythm, maybe a little awkward, but it kept going. For the first time in my life, I felt like I wasn't in control of anything. I couldn't stand up to prove my worth. I couldn't speak to make others listen. I could only lie there, staring at the ceiling, listening to machines keep my heart beating for me. And in those long hours alone, a terrifying thought appeared. If I had died that day, what would really have stopped? Not the company, not the cash flow, not the machine I'd spent my whole life serving. There might have been a few days of disruption, then everything would continue with a different name. That thought chilled me. I'd spent my youth trying to become irreplaceable, and one heart attack showed me the truth. I was replaceable faster than I'd ever imagined. The power I'd clung to didn't follow me into the emergency room. It stayed out there, keeping things running with someone else. And for the first time, I had to admit what I'd always avoided, that my power only existed as long as I could stand. After that heart attack, as my body slowly stabilized, what kept me awake wasn't the fear of death, but what started surfacing when I no longer had the strength to escape it with busyness. I didn't regret failed deals. I didn't regret wrong business decisions. I was used to winning and losing, used to standing in front of numbers and accepting consequences. Those things never kept me up at night. What kept me tossing and turning were the things without numbers, without records, without any way to measure them. The calls I never made, even though my phone was always in my pocket. The messages I read but didn't reply to. Because later, the dinners where I was physically present, but my mind was still in the meeting room, in emails, in problems I believed were more important. I clearly remember sitting across from my wife and kids, nodding along, while my head was calculating what I'd say to the board the next day. I was there, but I wasn't really there, and I'd convinced myself that was normal, that everyone would understand, that there would be time to make up for it later. I always thought someday when things were more stable, someday when I was less busy, someday when I hit one more milestone. The trips I promised to take, the mornings I promised to spend with family, the weekends I promised not to work, all pushed into a vague future. I called later. I thought I was sacrificing the present to build the future. In reality, I was trading the present for a future that never came. I remember a friend of mine who worked his whole life just like me. We used to sit together and talk about retirement, about the trips we'd take after this project. He always said, just a few more years. Then one morning, I got a call that he'd died from a stroke. He was 68 at the funeral. His son stood up to speak. The boy said, in a very calm voice, "My father was a very successful man, but I never really knew him." No resentment, no anger, just a fact, stated lightly. I stood there feeling like someone had just read aloud something I'd always tried not to think about. I suddenly realized that if someone said that about me one day, I wouldn't be able to argue. Then there was my father. He died when I was 45. We had a complicated relationship. More silences than real conversations. I always thought there would come a time when we'd talk it out properly, when I was less busy, when things were better. I clearly remember the Sundays I didn't call because I was too tired. The dinners I didn't drive over for because I had work. I thought I had plenty of time. I thought he'd wait. Then a call came saying he'd had a heart attack and was gone in hours. No chance for final words. No chance to fix things. Just a long list of things I could have done but didn't. Lying in my own hospital bed after my heart attack, I started to understand something very hard to accept. I never lacked time. I never lacked time. I just kept choosing to spend my time on other things. I'd traded it myself. I'd traded calls for meetings, traded quiet dinners for urgent emails, traded irretrievable moments for the feeling of being needed, important, busy. I'd told myself, over and over for years, I thought there was time, and I thought I was important. I thought if I didn't do it, no one would do it right. I thought if I stopped, everything would collapse. But when I really stopped, because my body forced me to, I saw the naked truth. The world kept going. Work got handled. The things I thought were life or death turned out to be temporary. Only the calls I didn't make were forever unmade. Only the dinners I wasn't truly present for would never come back. And I started asking myself, not as a philosophical question, but as a punch to the chest, if I disappeared tomorrow, what would really stop? Would it be the projects I'm chasing, or just the moments I've missed? Would anyone remember me for the decisions I signed, or for the times I was there when they needed me? I didn't ask that to torture myself. I asked it because for the first time in my life, I didn't have the strength to avoid the answer. And deep down, I knew that what I regretted most wasn't what I'd done wrong, but everything I hadn't done when I thought I still had time. Once those questions came up, I had no choice but to look back at my whole life. Not as a list of achievements, but as a chain of choices, one after another. I started to see clearly something I'd always deliberately avoided, looking it straight on. Power is only temporary, and it's far more fragile than I'd ever imagined. There was a time when I walked into any room and was recognized. People stood up when I arrived. They took notes when I spoke. They called me for advice, for decisions, for a nod. I thought that was my worth. But then I realized that worth was tied to the position, not to who I was. When I left that position, or when I could no longer hold it, the reputation faded almost frighteningly fast. The company I thought was part of me replaced me faster than I wanted to admit. At first temporarily, then officially, then permanently. A new name on the office door, a different voice in meetings, and in a short time the things I used to do every day became the old way. The decisions I signed became history. No one tried to erase me. I just gradually wasn't needed anymore. My phone rang less. The constant calls slowed down. People who once said they couldn't work without me stopped calling altogether, not because they hated me, just because they'd gotten used to not having me. And that hurt in a very different way. Not intense, not dramatic, but lingering. Some relationships changed quietly like that. People who'd come to me, not just for work, but because I was important, now met me with perfect politeness. We made small talk, asked about health, reminded each other of old memories. But there was a distance neither of us named. We weren't close anymore. We didn't need each other. We were just people who'd shared a chapter once. I started to understand that many of my relationships were built on the role, not on real presence. When the role disappeared, the relationships thinned. Looking back, I see I'd drifted far from the starting point long ago. I just hadn't noticed. I thought I was moving forward, but I was actually moving away from the things that mattered most. There are moments when I wonder if I'd turned back sooner. Would things be different? Then I have to be honest with myself. Some things can't be undone. Some gaps have formed that can't be fully filled. I have money. I have more time now. But I can't buy back the dinners where I wasn't really there. I can't buy back the calls I never made. I can't buy back being needed by someone not for my position, but for who I am. I started to see a painful but undeniable truth. I didn't lose everything at once. I didn't wake up one day and find it all gone. I lost it little by little. Every time I chose work over a person. Every time I chose someday over now. Every time I convinced myself that what I was doing was necessary, noble for the future. Until one day, when I stopped and looked around, I realized I didn't have much left to hold on to. Not because someone took it from me, but because I'd let go long ago. And that's when I understood, not in a flash of insight, but in the heavy quiet of old age. I didn't lose everything at once. I lost it little by little, until there was nothing left to hold on to. After realizing all of that, I didn't wake up one morning feeling redeemed, nor was there a moment when everything suddenly became clear and light. My change happened slowly, very slowly, and it wasn't pretty at all. First, I withdrew from power, not with a grand announcement, but with small, quiet steps back. I declined a few meetings. I handed over decisions that I used to insist on keeping in my hands. I got used to not always being the first one asked for an opinion. This was harder than I thought. Not because I didn't trust others, but because I'd gotten used to controlling everything to feel valuable. Letting go of control was like letting go of a crutch I'd leaned on for years. I felt awkward, uncomfortable, and sometimes useless. But it was in those moments that I started learning something new. I didn't need to control to exist. I began changing in very small ways, so small that from the outside, maybe no one noticed. I listened more, not to wait for my turn to speak, but to really hear what others were saying. I stayed still more, not because I had nothing to do, but because I no longer feared silence like before. I learned to sit in a room without needing to prove anything, without needing to be the smartest, fastest, most decisive. At first, the silence made me restless. I was used to being needed, to phones buzzing, to packed schedules. But gradually, I realized that silence wasn't empty, it was just new. I also had to face a truth that wasn't easy to accept. Not every relationship could be saved. Some people had gotten used to living without me, and they had no reason to go back to how things were. Some distances had formed too long ago to be bridged just by good intentions. At first, that hurt. I wanted to fix it. I wanted to make up for it. I wanted to redo it. But then I understood that desire, if not careful, was just another way to control. Not everyone owed me another chance. I learned to accept that, not with bitterness, but with honesty. Still, not everything was lost. Some relationships didn't go back to how they were, but became more real. Less expectation, less role-playing. I wasn't needed like before, but I was present in a different way. And strangely, that made me feel lighter. I no longer woke up feeling like I had to prove something that day. I no longer measured my worth by the number of calls or decisions made. For the first time in my life, I started feeling enough. Not because I had more, but because I stopped trying to fill voids with things that didn't belong there. I still carried the consequences of my old choices. I couldn't rewrite the past. I couldn't erase what was lost. But I no longer ran from them. I lived slower, not because I was getting old, but because I no longer feared being left behind. I understood that my change came late, and it didn't turn me into a different person. It just made me stop living in a role that no longer fit. And in that belated change, I found a kind of peace that wasn't noisy or showy, but enough to let me live my remaining years more honestly. I couldn't go back to live differently, but I could stop living wrong. Now, as I sit here at 73, I no longer have illusions that I have unlimited time ahead. I wake up each morning with a very clear awareness. The days left aren't as many as the days gone by. Not in a gloomy or desperate way, but in a sober one. I know my body won't give me too many more chances to make things right. And that's why I want to say this to you, especially if you're young, talented, busy and full of ambition, just like I was back then. I see you everywhere, in offices, in coffee shops, on early flights and late calls. You're smart, hardworking, and believe that if you just push a little more, everything will be fine. I know that feeling very well. I lived in it. I believed my role was who I was, that my title defined my value, that if I wasn't there, everything would fall apart. And I paid dearly for that belief. If I could go back and talk to my 30-year-old self, I wouldn't say work less or don't be ambitious. I'd say simpler things. but harder to hear. I'd say don't identify yourself with your role. Your job is what you do, not who you are. Don't sell your presence at home, with others, in your own life, to buy temporary power. Don't fool yourself that you're sacrificing for the future when you're really abandoning the present. I know you'll think, but I'm different. My situation is different. I just need a little more time. I thought that too. We all do. But life doesn't stop to wait for you to finish work. The people you love don't stay forever and call back later. Your body doesn't send a notice before it forces you to stop. I'm not telling this story to scare you, but to make you more honest with yourself. None of us knows exactly how much time we have, but we all know how we're using it. And at some point, you'll look back, like I am now, and wonder if what you traded was really worth it. Money can wait for you. Power will replace you, but time won't. If this story makes you pause a little, think a little, or call someone you haven't in a while, share it. Not for me, but for those racing ahead without asking where they're going. And before you continue your day, ask yourself a simple but not easy question. What are you trading? And are you sure you want to pay that price? If this story touches you, subscribe to the channel to keep hearing real words, not flashy, not preachy, just things many people take a lifetime to dare say. See you in the next story. Before time forces us to stop and realize